Foreign Minister Abdulla Shahid, we are hosting you this time. We've just come back from Mali and absolute hospitality that we got there. We hope we are returning the same favor to you. Thank you so much for giving us time.
Always a pleasure to be here in Delhi, and I'm received by the people of India with love.
There has been so much of a change in the last few months, and since we've been there, we've sensed the current. A shift completely from President Yamin's presidency in terms of the distancing or the frostiness or the iciness that was prevalent between Mali and New Delhi.
I was there to receive Prime Minister Modi on arrival, and the warmth with which he arrived to the country was again displayed when the Prime Minister arrived at the Government Stadium where the inauguration was taking place. The vigor with which the people received him showed that Prime Minister Modi's visit was all worth, and that the Maldivian people wanted to see the Indian Prime Minister at the inauguration. The culmination of the inauguration was the arrival of the President, the Prime Minister.
That's clearly a clear signal. So there is a shift both in the campaign that President Solih ran about India First policy, and you yourself have arrived here barely 7 days, a little more than that, after the inauguration, after the naming of the cabinet, after you were named as Foreign Minister.
It's a difficult time to be away from the capital. We are in the formative days of the new government. But President Solih wants the relations between our two countries to be of utmost importance, and that is why President has asked me and two of my cabinet colleagues, the Finance Minister and the Economic Minister, to come to Delhi and meet with our counterparts and discuss ways in which we can further make progress in our relationship.
You're mentioning a high-level delegation that is there with you now. That progress that you're talking about. Ex-President Nasheed has already gone on record. He spoke to us. He said that there was an invoice that was presented by the Chinese for over $3.2 billion. That is an extreme worry for one, auditing the projects that have been done, figuring out how much is debt, how much is government-to-government debt, how much is sovereign guarantees that have been given by the previous government to banks, say. What is the situation currently in the Maldives in terms of Chinese debt?
Our finance minister was in Parliament on Thursday to wrap up the debate and the discussions of the 2019 national budget. He was asked this question by parliamentary colleagues, and he has told us that the figures don't tally. The different figures that he is getting from the different departments and ministries of the government and the state-owned enterprises, they don't tally with what the finance ministry has. So it is too early to exactly put a definitive figure on how much we owe, not only to China but also to other countries and other banks. So it's unfortunate that the country is in this terrible situation, but it has been done purposely by President Yamin. It has been done in secrecy because last 5 years I was member of Parliament, and we have not had any access. The Parliamentary Finance Committee, Public Accounts Committee had no access to any of these government figures. And now when we are in government, we are seeing that the government departments themselves have no definitive figures on how much has been borrowed. So, but that describes President Yamin's presidency. It's shrouded in secrecy, in corruption, and underhand dealings.
But it is a situation that you are worrying about. President Solih on his inauguration itself was talking about looting of the treasury. There is a problem.
There is definitely a problem. President Solih has now established a commission to look into financial crimes, and we are hoping to get expert assistance from other countries like the United States, like India, like Japan, and also hire international auditors to assist us in getting the proper investigation underway and getting to know exactly what dictatorship of Yamin has done to the country.
You're talking about auditors, whether it's from the US or from India. Is there any further assistance you're looking at? Because there were reports that possibly you would need an immediate $300 million to tide over the crisis.
We have an immediate budgetary crisis. We need $250 to $300 million in order to gap the difficult budgetary situation we are in. We are left in a situation where the country is facing real hardship. But when I meet my counterpart tomorrow here in Delhi, I'm going to share this information. This information was shared with Prime Minister Modi immediately after the oath-taking ceremony by President Solih. And we are hoping that we will once again be able to get the generous assistance of the Indian government.
What is the situation vis-a-vis that? Because there was a credit line that had been offered, but it was probably frozen at $50 million. What is the situation vis-a-vis assistance financially that India is giving the Maldives?
Well, the credit facility has been released. Prime Minister on his first day informed President Solih that the credit facility would be released, and we are moving ahead with it. But we also need immediate budgetary support in order to sustain the services government has to essentially provide. We also came into office with a lot of pledges of providing infrastructure to the people, basic infrastructure like fresh water, like sewerage, like housing and access to islands, harbors. So these are pledges that we will have to deliver. And in order to deliver these, we need generous assistance of India and many of other friends in the international arena. I'm traveling to the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia after my trip to Delhi. I'm also hoping to travel to China during my tour of friendly countries.
A line of credit that India had given has been unfrozen soon after Prime Minister Modi arrived there, but you are still looking for more assistance to tide over the immediate situation.
Indeed, the budgetary support that we are seeking is $250 to $300 million, which is required immediately to gap the difficulties in providing services.
The pledges that have been given, you were talking about water, fresh water that has to...
We came into office making a lot of pledges. Essentially, the people need these infrastructure, fresh water, housing, sewerage systems, and access to the islands. And for that, we need the assistance of countries like India, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and many other countries with which we have had excellent, good relationship and who have been very generous in their assistance. I will be traveling from here to the United Arab Emirates and then hoping to travel to Saudi Arabia and also to China.
When you meet the foreign minister, will you be raising this issue of added assistance that is needed immediately?
Yes, I will be raising this. I'm also hoping that to raise with the foreign minister the issue of visa so that Maldivian nationals who come to India for educational purposes and medical purposes get more easy access to these institutions and establishments. And also we are ready to provide more easy access to Indian expatriate personnel who are the experts who are working in the Maldives, who have immensely contributed to the development of the country. And I think it's important that we move in this direction. We are hoping to have President Solih make his first maiden visit outside the country to Delhi, and hoping that during President Solih's visit agreements could be signed so that it will be a signal, it will be a symbol of the new era of relationship that we have between the two countries.
You mentioned that you will also be traveling to China in your Asia tour. President Rashid has talked about an audit of all Chinese projects. He told us also that an invoice had been presented by the Chinese ambassador. Are you going to raise the issue of not being able to pay back anything that is not asset driven or revenue generating for you in terms of the money that is coming from China? How will you deal with the situation with China?
As I mentioned before, I'm waiting for our finance minister to come up with the exact figures, and without knowing the exact figures and the clear picture of what President Yamin has done with the assistance that has been given by China, it will be unfair for me to say anything. I think once we have a clear picture, government will be in a much better position to respond to the question at hand.
The tilt towards China under President Yamin was clearly visible. As you mentioned, Prime Minister Modi only came for the inauguration. He had not even spoken, I think, on the phone to President Yamin during his tenure. The foreign minister had not visited. The Maldives was the only country which both had not visited in the SAARC region. That has changed. You were mentioning visas. It's much easier now even for us, for journalists to get into the Maldives. The tilt, apart from the economy or money that was coming in from China, was also being seen as a potential development of a naval port facility for the Chinese. Is there going to be a reversal in that policy under the new government?
President Yamin tried to play India against China and China against India, and he thought he was the puppet master. But what he forgot was that neither India nor China could be President Yamin's puppet. They have better relationship. There are high-level visits between the two countries. There are investments being carried on while Yamin was trying to do these things. So ultimately it was Yamin and the Maldives which greatly lost. We have wasted 5 years of our time and of our country, where we could have made much more progress if we have had good relations with both India and China. The new foreign policy would be based on the principle of having good relations with all countries which want to have relations with us. So we will not play one against the other.
So it's a balancing act. That
it would be.
But specifically in terms of a military port, is that going to be something you're looking at either within your or China, or ruling it out?
A military port is out of question. We will not, our constitution does not allow a military presence of any sort to be in the country without parliamentary approval. And it's the intention of the government of Maldives, President Solih's government, not to let any military port or any other facility to be in the country. We do not want ourselves to be entangled in international tensions. We have issues that we need to address more urgently. We need to address development. We need to address the hardship that our people are going through. We need more housing. We need infrastructure. We need health facilities, education, you name it, we need it. And our focus during President Solih's time in office would be to focus on these services, so that people would see a difference.
Again, one of the things that was feared was, if you look at the model that China has been following, where we saw in Sri Lanka what happened when there was a huge debt which was unable to be repaid, then land, ports are taken on lease. Whether it's Pakistan, Thailand has been pulling back from certain projects that China had been giving them because of the same reason. So I'm sure the Maldivian government is aware of that trap and is not going to get into it. Or how do you extricate yourself if you've been put into it by the previous regime?
We are quite aware of the possibilities, but it is not something that we can let happen. We will prevent it, we will find a way out of it, and we will talk to the Chinese government if need be. And I have confidence that the Chinese themselves would not try to run over the smallest of the small countries in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We will let sense prevail and generosity prevail.
When we talk about the 2 Indian helicopters that were gifted there, since then, your new defense minister has come out saying that they will not be returned. They've already saved almost 200 Maldivian lives through search and rescue operations as well. The personnel, Indian personnel, will remain there. Does that continue? Does that get enhanced in terms of whatever the Maldives needs? There's so 1,900 islands and atolls, the amount of sea area you cover, whether it's anti-piracy, whether it's fishing, whether it's drug running, human trafficking that you need to watch the ocean for. Do you need any more assistance, either in equipment or manpower from India?
The assistance that we have received in terms of these 2 helicopters, the 2 machines, is a generous gift by the government. They have helped save many lives. It's a humanitarian mission. And I think how the machines are made now are adequate. And together with more training to our personnel, I think we will be able to do the job in the foreseeable future.
President Yamin wanted those 2 helicopters to return along with the personnel. There's some in the Maldives, possibly in the opposition, who say the point that you were raising. Why has India not trained Maldivian pilots to fly these machines? In effect, it's a backdoor entry for military presence by India keeping their personnel there instead of letting the Maldivians fly the helicopters themselves.
Well, as we speak even today, the joint exercise Dosti is on its way. And we should not look at these issues and missions and joint operations on a single isolated basis. These are all joint operations and missions that go towards the development of our country. And I'm hoping that India will, in the foreseeable, not too long foreseeable future, train our personnel in this venture, and then it becomes like the Dosti exercise, a venture where, a mission where joint personnel will operate it.
I do believe that there are talks or discussions on for 2 fixed aircraft, fixed wing aircraft with Dorniers, and training of Maldivian pilots is already on in that case?
We have Maldivian pilots who can fly Dornier aircrafts. We have Dornier aircrafts being flown by Maldivians in the country. And talking about Dornier aircrafts, India very generously agreed to gift one, but President Yamin's government instead decided to ditch that proposal and buy one from Pakistan on a loan. And Yamin's government loved loans because there you can get a commission out of it, and the people involved can line their pockets. So we will not do that. We will rather go for the Dornier that has been gifted by India.
A lot of foreign policy changes will occur. They already have started, in fact, the cabinet ratifying your return to the Commonwealth, you will probably also re-establish ties with both Qatar that you have broken off ties with under President Yamin. So there will be policy reversals on the international front as well.
Well, on the international front, the Commonwealth decision to join the Commonwealth has already been taken.
Yes.
On the re-establishment of relations between the other countries, we will be reviewing it, and we will, of course, need time to make a decision on these issues.
You have vast experience. You've been a foreign minister before that, a director under President Gayoom. You've handled international organizations, the UN. What is your focus going to be in terms of immediately the Maldivian foreign policy?
Our foreign policy, as President Solih has highlighted in his inaugural speech, is internationally it's going to be the promotion of democracy and human rights. We will also would re-establish ourselves as the champion of climate change and environmental issues. Last 2 years, Maldives has been the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, but it's 2 years that has been wasted. Maldives' name didn't even come up internationally on these fronts. So these are the issues that we will try to get engaged and establish ourselves as leaders.
And President Solih has already assigned ex-President Rashid to lead the delegation for COP24 in
Yes.
Poland. And I remember in our interview, President Rashid also said the signal will be to show the world that the Maldives is back and climate change has a meaning and there should be immediate action on it.
Yes, climate change is an issue which is linked to the survival of our country. So if we can't talk about it internationally, what do we need to talk about? And the 2 years that have been wasted as chair of Alliance of Small Island States is such a shame.
In terms of the coalition, because there's a lot of worry on whether this coalition, which is seeing disparate members with different ideologies, different parties and personalities who have been against each other in the past as well, coming together. How significant is it in terms of keeping this flock together, so as to speak?
It is essential. The people of the country gave a vote of confidence to the coalition. And it is incumbent on the leaders of the coalition to make sure that it functions. If we don't, then the chance for democracy to flourish in the Maldives is dimmer.
In terms of specific assistance, you said you would be raising the issue with India. You're also looking at, you mentioned UAE, Saudi Arabia, the US, China possibly to get your debt issue resolved. Specifically, money you would be asking for assistance, in terms of assistance or grants from these countries, including India?
Yes.
And when I look at the coalition politics, how confident are you that this government will last its term? We've seen coalitions sometimes not even last 100 days because of the personalities involved.
President Solih is a person who has managed the coalition in the past 3 years. When we first engaged ourselves in as a united opposition, there were many whom I met, both locally and internationally, who said, no, this won't work. You guys have done this before and you fall apart, and this is not going to succeed. But we did, mainly because President Solih has that capacity of listening and dealing and leading a diverse coalition. And we all
vast experience in Parliament.
In the Parliament, yes. And we count on him to lead this coalition, and I think the country is counting on. The cabinet, a very diverse group of people, are behind him. So is the Parliament. So far, the leadership of all parties have pledged their unreserved support to President Solih. And I have every confidence that we will succeed.
China has been seen as trying to show its military might and economic might, or project that through its military might in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. It has bases all the way up to Djibouti. India had shared concerns about being surrounded by what we call the string of pearls with Chinese bases there. What do you feel China's role is in the Indian Ocean region, since it's actually on the Pacific and in the China Sea, South China Sea?
Indian Ocean should be free of military rivalry. For us, small islands in the Indian Ocean, it is essential that we have an ocean of peace. If rivalry persists, it will be smaller countries like ours who stands to lose most. Our economy is based on tourism, and tourists come to Maldives because they want a peace of mind. We do not want international disputes to be brought onto our shores, and we will do everything possible to avoid it.
You have talked about President Yamin and his regime and all the issues, talking about corruption. President Solih has talked about money laundering. Investigations are on, commissions have been set up. How does that progress? Because when administration to administration changes in the Maldives, sometimes it is also seen either one side of the coin is bringing someone to justice, the other side is a witch hunt. How do you balance between finding out if there has been any illegality and then taking action against a person, and not falling into this vicious circle of one administration taking action against the previous?
We are not a revengeful government. We do not want to go after any individual. That is why we have established an independent presidential commission. Once the commission finishes its work, it will be up to the Prosecutor General to do whatever that she has to do under Maldivian law. We came into power pledging that we will promote rule of law, and it would be improper for the government to say that we will prosecute person A, person B, or we don't know. And that is why we have established these commissions. So it will be up to the commissions, it will be up to the officers of law to see who is going to be prosecuted and on what charges.
Like I was saying, you have vast experience, not only in foreign relations, you have been in the ministry before, you have vast experience in parliament, you've been a speaker, you have a following, mass following. Where do you see yourself? Because there was a lot of buzz that even for this coalition, you could have possibly been a candidate that was put up instead of President Solih, or maybe the next time.
Well, it's too early to talk about a next time. Today my job is to back President Solih and his government, and I want to be a committed member of the cabinet to make sure that President Solih has a successful presidency.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us in Delhi. Like we said, the hospitality of the Maldivians when we were there was absolutely fabulous. We hope we are reciprocating that to you. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in Delhi. Lovely weather.